Time is 6 p.m. Council City of Denison will now convene into regular session. Tonight's invocation will be given by Reverend Danny Rupp from Cottonwood Creek Baptist Church. Father, we come before you this evening, and we do pray for our mayor and our city council leaders. We pray for wisdom and discernment. Pray that you bless them in this time of meeting, that it be done orderly, and it will be done for the best benefit of this city and the members of it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council has informed the agenda item number 2, which is the consent agenda. I've asked that we remove the fire station to talk about that outside of the consent agenda. Is there any other items that we need to remove? Being none, is there a motion to approve?
Move we approve the consent agenda, pulling out the fire station.
A motion from Councilman Spindle, second from Councilman Malvern. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. So if we could go back there and to the fire station discussion, Mr. Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. You had contacted me Friday afternoon and asked about additional architectural treatments that could be done to add even more character to the fire station. Visiting with Piazza Construction, they've added a $30,000 allowance for a stone wainscot. The current design of the fire station shows, it's called king size brick. It's just a larger brick, but that would be the current wainscot element. This contract has an updated number to allow for that additional wainscot of stone. It also has 2 other items, changes that came in based off plan review for 2 minor changes, electrical and plumbing. One was an upsized panel, and there are some additional mechanical lines that were mechanical or plumbing changes that were made. Those changes totaled about $6,950, so they're really minimal in the big scheme of the contract. The large item is the allowance for stone. So what you have before you tonight is a guaranteed maximum price of $1,976,108. I think that's correct, and 48 cents. And that's what we're asking council to approve. We're asking the council give me authorization to execute this addendum, so we move forward with the project in that dollar amount.
Okay, as the council recalls when we were talking about this, I know we mentioned some stone, if it could come in a budget that we could live with. The numbers did come in under $2 million, of which we issued that for. And visiting with Mr. Hanna Friday, I'm just convinced that this is the first building that Denison, City of Denison, is building or has built in, David, how many years?
3 or 4 decades.
3 or 4 decades. And with that, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity again to make it nice for Denison. It's an asset that will be around for 50 years. It's in a growing part of our community, and to add the stone to accent the brick on there, I think is something that will really make this building pop. And I have confidence in Piazza and their designers and our architects to make sure they pick the right stuff there. But it's just, again, an opportunity to maximize, what this building looks like. So that's the intent. And if I remember the council correctly when we discussed this, that was also the vision of the council at the time, just to do it as good as we could do it within our budget limitations.
one final comment, if I might. What would also be included in that is permission for staff to include the $75,000 in non-guaranteed maximum price expenditures that were detailed in the agenda information sheet. Generators, appliances, that sort of thing.
Other questions from council? Comments?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the request to allow the city manager to enter into the guaranteed contract.
Second. Have a motion from Councilman Spindle, second from Councilman Beck. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Agenda item number 3A, hold a presentation on the capital improvement planning project with Teagnall Perkins.
Mayor and council, in the fall of 2011, we started on a process that really is going to direct the development of Denison for the foreseeable future, the infrastructure. Staff went through a process of selecting a team with Teagnall and Perkins and Allen Plummer Associates. I'm sure you all recall some of that. Tonight we have Chris Schmidt from TNP and Adam Rose from APAI. They started on this project in November of 2011 and spent about a year and a half on this. You've all been given copies of it, and I'm sure you've started it, but maybe not finished it. There's a lot of information, but we're very excited about the results. Nothing's perfect, but this is something that the city hadn't done in over 30 years. I think it dates back to 1980. So with just a very limited introduction, I'd like to let these guys share with you their approach, what they see, and I think after tonight's action, or tonight's visit, then we'll be looking at maybe taking action on approving the plan 2 weeks from tonight. Chris, you're first.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. As you mentioned, we've been working on this for a year and a half. Tonight, we were asked to provide a brief summary of some of the things we've been working on, to really limit it to about 10 minutes or so. If we get into 15 minutes, we may get some spec counters on the ceiling. So we're gonna do our best to keep it under that time frame. Again, thanks for that introduction. I'm sorry if I'm blocking both of you. Mr. Howerton, thank you for that. Again, I'm Chris Schmidt with Teagnall and Perkins. My partner in crime this evening is Mr. Rose with Allen Plummer and Associates. We're going to talk just a little bit about the process, some of the things that we went through to get to this point. Adam's really the expert on GIS systems, and their firm did the water and wastewater plant work. And I'm going to briefly describe some of the processes on the water system and the pavement inventory analysis. I didn't grab my clicker. Thank you. The next slide, isn't it? When you get into planning, there's a couple of different ways you can approach this. What we deem as a traditional approach is that you study the world, you study everything, you spend all this effort and energy into studying it, and then you try to figure out, okay, how do I implement that? That process is lengthy. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of investment in resources and really capital. Our approach was really to visit with city, to visit with staff, to just dive into what the city's needs are, what are the city's priorities, then figure out, okay, let's develop a list, let's figure out what the hot buttons are, let's figure out how to fund those, get some results, really look for results. Let's fund it, let's implement the plan, and get the results as quickly as possible. And as we go through my slides are a little out of order. Prioritizing, how do I go back? Is that previous? Okay, as we go through prioritizing projects, what's important? Are there public safety, are there health safety issues? Are there compliance? Are we out of compliance? Are there pending compliance issues forthcoming? Are there impact? Is there development forthcoming, which we know that there is. There's development in Denison. Again, visiting with staff. Staff knows the system better than we do. So we needed to take a very keen ear to listening to staff. And there were multiple meetings with staff as we went through the process. Really at the bottom, your funding is a precious resource. So we want to make sure we get the most bang for our buck. Where are we spending these dollars? And make sure we spend them wisely and get results and results that you need. Like I said, my slides are a little out of order. Let me back up. Again, our approach was to minimize the study costs, not to study the world and maximize your funding available for development.
In the overall process, our tasks were noted in red. These are the things that we really highlighted in our report, were streets, water and wastewater, and GIS is not on there, but that's another part of the process that we worked on, our team. I think there's another firm that's working on the Parks Master Plan. That's all part of this. It's a different document. The facilities plan, I'm not sure where that stands. Downtown revitalization, I know that there's some things happening, some exciting things happening downtown, but this is all part of this capital improvements process as a whole. And this is just one piece of that from the infrastructure side. Checklist, again, what did we work on? Development of the GIS database. We got a great start there. We put a lot of data in there that's going to continue to be built on for the years to be forthcoming. Limited wastewater study. We really highlighted the water system in this report, so we really spent a lot of effort and energy, but there was also Plummer and Associates, Adams Group. They identified one of the main tributary, one of the main trunk systems in town and did some extensive studies there. And again, the pavement inventory analysis was another aspect. So Adam's the expert on GIS. Adam?
I'm going to touch on this quickly.
Yes, please.
I can spend all day on GIS, I won't do that for you though, but just know, like Chris said, this is basically two functions. One is to kind of start as the kernel for your GIS program moving forward. And then two basically supports the water and wastewater studies. Those models are built on top of GIS. So the project started with that, and all I really want to touch on was using industry standard database to start that process. And then we collected data from TCOG and other sources that are kind of base map data, and then your utility data, so valves, lines, facilities, information like that. Can I go right into the wastewater?
Yes.
Oh, you ran off. I only have three more slides. So wastewater study is made up of two things, basically. The collection system itself, so everything from the manholes into the lift stations and then down to the plant. And so to be aware of effort, we had city staff actually help build the systems. They went out in the field and shot over 500 manholes to actually build a network in 3 dimensions. We did wastewater flow monitoring to kind of load that system, built a model off of it, and then developed recommendations from that. As far as the plant goes, as Chris said, Alan Plummer did both the water and wastewater plant, very high level, basically looking at the plant and any other recommendations that need to happen kind of moving forward. The conclusions that overall the collection system itself, so it's the wastewater collection system, is good in dry weather, so in conditions like right now. Sections of the system show to be in poor condition, some of the system is old. That kind of shows up in a high infiltration rate. So in other words, if it rains, some storm water or non-sanitary water leaks into the system. That shows up also at the treatment plant, where the wet weather flow, the ratio of what happens when it's a lot of wet weather versus a day like today is high. You're treating water that is storm water, basically. But all in all, in good condition, certainly based on the efforts that have happened over the last 30 plus years. And so from that, we have a limited number of recommendations. Again, from the collection system being a relatively limited study, we have some targeted non-capital recommendations in the future for more specific evaluations. There are 2 gravity lines. You can see them in that figure. I apologize, they're kind of small. There's one to the south. It's more of a short-term project as far as fee goes, and that's in the document. It's in the neighborhood of $6 million. The gravity line to the north is much longer. It's a long-term project. It's in the order of $12 million today. That's a longer-term project. And then the treatment plant itself, again, more evaluations. So the energy work with Schneider is basically completed. A lot of the condition assessment work, we feel that staff is capable of doing that. We just listed what they are. And then there's a UV system evaluation that we recommend. But that basically summarizes the wastewater side of things in a whirlwind. And I'll let Chris jump back in if you have any other questions. I'll be happy to answer them.
Under the water system, again, a run of the study was spent developing our water model system. This exhibit just shows the different pressure planes kind of through town. There's 4 different primary systems in town. The main system, our Parkdale system, the base, and the college system. So those all systems really kind of work together to support the city. We built the model. Calibrated the model, looked at the different things that you do when you develop a model. You look at max day conditions, where are your soft spots in the city, and fire flow. We have a fire in different parts of town. We can now plug that system in anywhere in town and watch what happens. Bells and whistles go off. if there's areas of concern. So we now have that capability, which we did not have before. We've looked at 10-year and 50-year development horizons. 50 years seems excessive, but depending on the growth that the city of Denison's seen in the last 20 years, that was just a projection. We can easily extrapolate between 10 and 50 at any time. And in your packets, you have a long-term and a short-term list of projects and priority. Also looked at the plant, as Adam mentioned, we looked at the plant, and one of the larger ticket items that's in the short-term needs is the raw water intake structure. And Mayor Johnson mentioned earlier about the 50-year life cycle, and that's about where that guy's at. So it's about lived his life, but it's got a little bit left in it. The water model system comprises about 163 miles of piping in the system itself. A lot of smaller diameter pipes also in the city that we have mapped, but they don't really comprise the water system. Smaller diameter don't affect the model as much. There's approximately 11,000 service connections to the city of Denison. The model helps us look at conveyance issues and development and plan for those things and make sure we're properly looking ahead to those needs. The plant regulatory, total dissolved solids is another issue that we've looked at. We know the regulatory things are changing for us, and again, the raw water system, that water intake structure. It's not as pretty as the fire station, but it's a lifeline to the city. The list of projects, short terms, $14 million projects were identified in the short term, 2 to 5 year horizon, including the intake structure. Was an approximate budget of $8 million. Long term, we had about $4.5, $5 million worth of projects in that 5 to 10 year horizon. And there was also a list of future projects that were out there that need to be considered as moving forward. Again, the plant, just continue to monitor the plant and treatment strategies for its regulatory issues and just growth. And once again, the raw intake structure, we know that's something that has to be addressed. On the pavement side, our efforts on the pavement side are really just to put our eyes on all the streets in the city. We drove all the streets in the city and graded them all. And the great thing about this map, which you'll see, is green. There's 2 shades of green. We grade them A, B, C, and D. A and B are 2 different levels of green. It's good. Those are good. Those are in great condition. The yellow and the red streets, those are poor to really bad streets. The red are really bad. Poor to worse. In our inventory, we really graded all of these streets. Again, A, B, C, D, identified. Okay, as part of the process, we also want to make sure is that if we do major pavement revitalization, we want to package that with a water project. So even if a water project may not be a pending priority or a hot spot, we don't want to go repair a street and then find out 5 years later that we've got a water project or right there on top of it. The short-term projects, we really graded out as just an overlay, just more of a patch repair overlay. The long-term projects have they just lived their life. I mean, it's good to look at, the short-term projects have lived their life. Those are the D grade streets. Really need a replacement or an overlay. On the long-term projects, more of a slurry seal, just manage the best what you have there today. Try to maximize cost, maximize your revenue on or your expenditure on your streets. And another thing now that we have this system, we have this database, there's different software packages out there to help you manage that. As you have pothole repairs, or you have different things you do, this management software will help you manage that and grade that out so that you know, again, from a planning aspect, when you have those expenditures and when you have those capital costs forthcoming. Because our task was really just this first step in developing a database of the streets. Okay, we can do a Q&A. Just to summarize, we've spent about 1.5 years working with staff, developing the water model system, developing the GIS system, wastewater inventory analysis, and a treatment plan analysis, and a pavement inventory assessment. So those are the things we've been working on for the last 1.5 years, and that comprises your nice paperweight and your 3-ring binder there.
If I can dovetail onto the street comment about just the analysis they did on our pavement conditions, There are cities in Texas that will give their right arm to have the pavement conditions that we have in this town. I know people complain about our streets, but we have excellently maintained roads. The only issue I have with is how we fund that. That's a longer discussion. We debt finance a lot of that stuff that really ought to be paid with capital. But we've made those decisions because those are the revenue sources we had. As we go into the future and new revenue presents itself, those are issues we can discuss. But I think this community and council ought to be very proud of the condition of the payments because we've done a good job. Y'all have done an excellent job of maintaining the road infrastructure in this town.
Thank you, Chris. Questions from council?
I just have one question. The long-term projections, are those future dollars that you costed out the projects? Or are they today's dollars?
Those are today's dollars. We did not have an inflation component to that. We had a contingency component to it, but it was not in addition to an inflation component.
At one time, I don't know if you looked at it on the raw water intake, that the North Texas Water District had excess night capacity in their pumps placed for additional pumps. Was that looked at as a source of putting pumps in, building a whole new deal, leasing into their system or anything?
I'm not sure of the details of that. Mr.
Chris,
Miller?
I can.
And I was just told that, so that's why I'm asking.
They have, I visited with Jerry Chapman on that very issue, and all of the capacity in that system is accounted for. And David, you can add more light to that if you want to. You may know numbers off the top of your head, but I don't believe there's any capacity in that facility.
Or the pump, you could add additional pumps in within their structure. They're not necessarily tapping into their existing deal.
And those spaces are all spoken for.
Okay.
North Texas has added some pumps. NTMWD has maximized their use of that line. Any remaining capacity would have to be negotiated with the city of Sherman.
Chris, one of the things you mentioned was your interaction with staff, and we do have great staff, and David and all of the guys and ladies who work with them are tremendous. One of the things, though, it's always a concern for us is we don't know everything. So, from a staff standpoint, so you're comfortable with all the regulations that are going to be forthcoming that we may not be aware of, that you've flushed all those out through with the water system and all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Chris, with the new materials we're using for like sewer and water, how much are we extending the useful life for those pipes or?
Well, let's just use a sewer pipe, for example. 30, 40 years ago, when some of these pipes were installed, even water, and those were clay pipes or asbestos cement pipe or something of that level. Well, your new polymers and the PVC pipe that we're using today just has a longer lifespan. So, yeah.
We're reaching beyond the 50-year life cycle. Is that
Some of the originals, the original installation, yeah, we're pushing the envelope. There's no doubt.
end of life on the materials we're using that's in place today are somewhere shy of 50 years? Are we gonna get plus 50 years out of what we're putting?
You can get more shelf life more usable life out of it, but you start to lose capacity because there's either corrosion or buildup. If you have a 14-inch pipe, it may be effectively a 3-inch today, just because of all the minerals and buildup on that material.
Can I add something real quick to that? That's a great question, and at least on the sewer side, that can be expensive to actually, CCTV and really get into the pipe and see the actual condition. We try to do that on the sewer side, kind of as a surrogate by looking in the manhole, and so you'll see some figures on what we think the condition is there. That gets kind of into asset management and kind of maintain the condition at a level of service. So we've kind of had some recommendations about how to do that moving forward, but a lot of that can be a little more effort to really get down to where you are in the life cycle of that. So, but it's a good question.
Question, Ken, your question too, though, is the stuff that we're putting, that when we replace it now, how much?
Giving a greater.
Yeah, with the new stuff we're putting.
Longevity.
Right.
Should be increasing our life cycle, useful life of the material.
Yeah, the new material definitely has, obviously, it's new. Whenever you start segmenting those pieces, if you're just connecting the dots between two, you won't realize the full benefit until you get from point A to point B. So even if you replace a section in the middle, that piece is great, but the line feeding that, it still has reduced capacity. You get half the benefit.
Chris, on the GIS, so obviously the results of this is we have a guidebook and a document that we can use to plan for many years to come. But the GIS component, we actually can start taking advantage of those benefits today. Right? And David and his team are able to already begin to utilize that. Right.
That's correct.
And then how does that overlay, I guess, with today in your world with zoning? On the different layers of GIS, are they related, or have we started utilizing that, or?
We haven't started utilizing it with the water and sewer layovers, but we can.
I mean, does that bring any
Yeah.
extra value there to the?
I think it brings from a development standpoint, value in that when a developer says, hey, where's your water line at? We can print a map that shows the water lines are at. Where the valves might be at, what size the lines are, what type of line it is, if it's a sewer line, gravity versus pressure main. And so those all help the development community. It also helps us plan. And I think the challenge we have going forward is integrating these things into our different existing systems and making sure that we're taking full advantage of them. But the tools are there, and we didn't have them before. I think our map products will be better because we'll have more information that's more telling.
Good.
So will we have the ability then, David, to go out in the field next week and be able to have access from a laptop to be able to go down to an area to see where the maps are digitally? Or are we still relying on maps that we're pulling out, physical maps?
Well, the fellows are still using their paper maps right now because we haven't fitted everyone with laptops in the trucks.
How many laptops would that take, or how much, what are we looking at that? Is that budgeted for the future to do that?
It's not budgeted right now. Our feeling is for this year, it's gonna take us a while to go back through the document and really plan, and we're gonna spend the next year actually determine the priorities that we wanna bring to council and how we're gonna fund those. So we have the needs, this is a lot for us to take in as well.
Okay.
Any questions? All right, Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 3B, Street Overlay Program, Mr. Howard.
Mayor and council, excuse me, we've already spent a little bit of time on this. We had two surveys to assess the streets. One is the one that was just mentioned by Chris in the CIP planning, and overall, you could see the amount of good and green designations he had on his map. The other one that we do biannually, it may have been longer than that since we last performed this, is one through TCOG, and they have taken advantage of retired highway department employees to go to every street and check every street in a much more comprehensive fashion. I've got a 50-page listing here, and as I shared with you in the AIS, there's almost 1,800 blocks that total very close to 175 miles of streets. The average rating in here is 3.8 on a scale of 0, which is basically just a path between trees, and 5 would be a paved, quality paved, very much recently paved street without any real problems of any kind. Basically, it gets down to what we determine are most important, and what's important to the community on a local basis. What the fellows are seeing as they're out, it's subjective. It gets down to different people's opinion as to what is the greatest need. I know Councilman Malvern pointed out a street to us the other day that we're going to get to, but it's East Shepherd. There's a couple of blocks of East Shepherd that are terrible, but we can't do anything until we do the water line. We've got to do the water line first. And Chris alluded to that too. The other thing that I'll just beat the drum about a little bit is the dollars that have been spent on overlay, and especially the milling and overlay that we've done the last several years, have been very good spent as far as getting the most for your money. We can't always go back in and totally grind these streets up, mix them in, and rebuild them, although some foundations are not good. We can't always, just like Lloyd Lake, whenever we paved it from near the pool all the way out. We took a risk. We repaired some water sections, but not all. And we took a risk that there might be another water leak in Lloyd Lake Road. But that's part of the judgment that we have to make. At this level is what's more critical. If you can't always go in and replace the water and sewer, and even when you do, the gas company may not. They may still be there with the leak as soon as you get through overland. If they have to fix the gas leak, we know that. So it's really us doing the best we can with the information that's available. Now we have two very good assessments. One of them will be reworked in a couple of years. This year, we brought back a lesser overlay program than what we've had in the past, much less than what was budgeted, but I guess the biggest point out of this discussion is $1.6 million. We had $400,000 identified for this year, but we're only recommending just a little over $200,000 for this year. So this is a list of streets that we feel like has a need. I did want to delete the 1500 block of West Main from this list, so that'll be an adjustment. But the rest of these streets are the ones that I drove again today, just to tell you that there is a need there, and if you want to go forward, this is a program we can do this fall. It's not that many blocks, but if you want to hold off, we'll be okay. It's just really, as Mr. Hannah alluded to, this is a funding issue.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Motion from council.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilman Hannah, second from Councilmember Gott. All in favor, must say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Agenda item 4C, 2014 budget. Wagner.
Mayor and members of the council, we have before you a budget presentation that I will go through. We asked, staff asked that we give direction, that you give us direction tonight on where we need to go on that. Because I need to present this to the city secretary on Friday. We have to post that with the city secretary and put our draft budget on the website. We can make changes, even though it is filed with the city secretary up until the time that you vote on or adopt the budget in September. I'm actually going to get it stand at the front so I can talk better than sitting down. A lot of information. I tried to make this a little bit smaller presentation than I did last time, just because we've been over it. This will be our third time to go over the budget. But I did want to go over any changes that we've made since our last meeting in July. As you can see here, we've increased our days of reserve in general fund to 74 days. And I gave you this information in the reading file. A portion of this is increased revenue from property tax, and that is based on some abatements falling off, some Freeport exemptions not really falling off, but their inventory being reduced, therefore they don't have those exemptions for Freeport, or as many that would be with Caterpillar. And then we also increased our sales tax $100,000 for next year based on projections and what we've done the last few months. That gives you the increase of 6 days from the original estimates we had back in July. I have included in the expenditures here, and we talked about this previously, the pay proposal is included in the expenditures for next year. The insurance increase, the 5% insurance increase, health insurance, and the workers' comp decrease, and the TMRS decrease. So everything is included here that we have had discussions about, except for those individual items we're going to get to shortly. The next page is capital request. The streetscape implementation, I was made aware late last week that we did not receive that grant, so that's something we will not be considering. We have added 2 Tahoes and a fitting cost for those 2 Tahoes in the budget. Those numbers are already in the numbers you see on the first page. We've also added built-in a lease, which is just kind of a loan for the brush truck, the new commercial side loader truck, and the new 5 cubic yard dump truck. That expense is also built into the numbers you see on the first page. It's $60,000 a year for 7 years. The next page. This is the decision points that we need direction on tonight, if at all possible. This would be the City Hall remodel, approximately $60,000 for flooring and furnishings, which would be approximately a day on your fund balance, because your fund balance and your days are worth about $55,000 in your general fund. The next decision point is in-house demolition and mowing, and we do have backup included here. And it's going to, the cost of this is going to vary depending on the number of demos we can do per year. And Speakman and Howerton and Dell, I know, have worked on this if you have questions on the in-house demolition. The next decision point is the PD traffic unit, and there is backup included in that as well. This, the cost for the PD traffic unit for a 2-man unit is $135,000 for the first year. Estimated revenue is around $197,000. The revenue for that would cover the cost of the PD traffic unit and the court clerk with additional funds remaining. The court clerk at $39,992 is with all benefits included. And neither one of the demolition, the traffic, and the court clerk would really have no effect on your fund balance. The PD remodel is $322,530 for year 1 and equates to 6 days on your fund balance. Do you have any questions on these decision points?
I think we'll address these all at the end.
Okay, that's
Thanks.
fine. Then we'll move on to the water sewer fund. Nothing has changed here since you last saw the numbers back in July. We have a very strong water sewer fund. 74 days of reserved at the end of next year, and our minimum's 55 and our maximum's 91. So as you can see, we don't go anywhere close to the minimum. The capital requests that are built into the water and sewer fund are listed on the next page. They include new valves, soft starters, trash pumps, impellers, service line camera packages, clarifier drive equipment, crane and labor, etc. It equates to $98,900, and it is built into the numbers you've seen on the water sewer page. Also built into the water sewer expenses is a new position. This is a technical and administrative support employee for the Public Works Director, and that includes all benefits, and it is built into the current budget. The only decision point that we have tonight for the water sewer fund would be the annex remodel, and that's at $50,000 for flooring and furnishings, and that equates to 2 days of fund balance, which is about $25,000 a day for fund balance in the water sewer fund. Real quickly, I'm going to go through the next slides here. I need to go back. Yeah, one more. Thank you. The mayor had asked for the general fund division summaries, just to kind of see where we budgeted, what we're projected for this year, and what we're budgeting for next year. And I did a fiscal year change between what we're projecting to end this year at versus what we're budgeting for next year. And then I gave explanations of the increase or decrease. I feel those are self-explanatory, but if you had any questions, feel free to ask if you were curious about any of the numbers on general fund division summaries. Overall, there's about $100,000 more in general fund, and you can equate that to the 2 Tahoes. Water and sewer fund had a large decrease compared to what we're projected to do this year, budget next year. And the biggest portion of that is capital equipment we actually purchased from the water sewer fund this current year. The CIP plan that they just discussed will not be budgeted for next year because it is complete. And then leases that are falling off for the water and sewer fund. Would you like for me to go through each of the individual funds? There's several of those.
Yeah, I don't think so, but probably we want to hit maybe just on the rainy day fund and
Street improvements and.
well, we talked a lot about the streets already, but well, anyone with the council wants, but also the water and sewer capital.
Okay. Rainy day fund. This is the one where we set aside 5% of sales tax. Started the year off with around $200,000. Transfer from general fund this year is approximately going to be $210,000. We transferred the balance from city trust fund. We had made several purchases for capital, and once we made those purchases, we took the balance from the city trust fund and moved it over here to the rainy day fund. We're trying to combine several of our funds to decrease the number of those that exist. The Schuler panel we received this year was $500,000, and we received a KDN station payment for $25,000 and a transfer from the project participation fund. And this was a portion of the money left over from the Levi note payment that we put over there for minimum property standards. Then we had a small amount of interest we're going to earn this year. As you can see, we had pocket park expenses this year, demolition of 104 East Main, and the PD roof. And then we designated the project money from Schuler for this year and then next year as well, so that we don't think we have that extra money to spend. Anticipating ending 2014 with 446,022. Any questions? Okay, the next big fund that we're going to speak to is Fund 22. This is your water and sewer bond fund. As you can see, many projects going on this year. Those that aren't completed this year obviously will be, we will move forward with those in next year, but I put the costs in this year since we began the projects in the current year. Once we complete the projects for 2013 and add a few for 2014, such as the SSO projects, the the Parkdale ground storage tank, you're looking at around $278,000 left remaining at the end of fiscal year 2014. So I know that's a very important number, especially when we talk about the CIP and what our short-term projects are going to be. Definitely going to have to make some changes there.
Renee, would you go through Fund 27 as well?
Yes.
That may be what.
Sure.
Bigger than I was thinking about.
Oh, okay. This is the capital project fund. This is the fund where we set aside 5% of water sales. We began the year with $295,000, and we anticipate transferring from the water sewer operating fund $300,000 this year. We have not expensed anything for this year and do not anticipate. But we anticipate next year beginning a balance of $595,000 and our expenditures, and then obviously having a transfer from water sewer based on water sales. Our expenditures, this is where we added some of the capital for water and sewer. And we have $407,500 worth of capital. That's a 3/4 ton truck, a new 1/2 ton pickup, a new Holland backhoe, a new 1/2 ton pickup, a dozer, and new operations office and lab building. And that will put us at $483,925 for the end of fiscal year 2014. And that's a capital project fund.
For council members, I think every one of y'all have been up in the sewer plant now and seen the trailer that they're in. This would be an actual office building for them. It'd be a metal structure, but more substantial than a trailer.
they gonna modify any of the existing buildings as you first go into that complex?
I don't believe so, David. You don't have any entry into the pawpaw plant identified here, do you?
No, the only existing masonry building is only about 15, 18 foot square.
Okay.
It's pretty small.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on the funds?
Thank you, Renee. So let's get back to the decision points, I guess, for tonight. Are there any questions, other questions from council before we get back? Kurt, can you put that decision point slide back up, please? So as we saw, we've got about a $573,000 budgeted surplus right now in the general fund. I do want to point out that is in addition to the rainy day transfer in there. So again, the staff's diligence, we continue to see make great strides in our fiscal health of the city. I guess first up is City Hall remodel. Robert, so this is current building, flooring, furniture in some of the most publicly accessible areas, that's correct?
That is correct. It would be a placement of all the carpet. The only thing that's not included is the stairwells, and I think that's correct. I want to confirm that. But if we do something, I want to do something with the flooring treatment and the stairwells as well, because it's well used.
We won't be voting on this tonight, you just need some direction, right? So
We just need to know.
I think this is a public building, public place, and I think it needs to, brother, it's great that we uplift that building, needs some here.
And I would add, at least so we'll know, if we can see what the cost would be, not for budget, but for the project to redo these restrooms.
Yeah, what I'd like to do with that is get David Baca to come and look at that bathroom area and see if he can come with an idea to kind of merge. You've got a unisex and women's bathroom right next to each other with a mop closet. If there's something you can do with that area to have an accessible bathroom that is truly accessible and at the same time more attractive than what we have now, I think that'd be a good plus. But that won't be $60,000.
No, of course not, but at least give us something to look at that there. Okay, any other thoughts on the remodel? So the in-house demolition, I think we said this was a 37 demolition break-even point, or 39 break-even point, 37 is what you're budgeted on there to take this in-house. Obviously, this is something that we'll have lots of performance opportunities to measure to make sure that this is working well going forward. Any new discussion on that, or anybody opposed to taking this in-house?
I'm very much in favor of this, yes.
All right. Thank you, staff, for bringing that to us. Let's skip the traffic unit, because that'll probably have a lot of discussion. We'll do that one last. Court clerk. It says funded by additional revenue, but I think it's staff's position that we need this position regardless of the traffic unit. Correct?
Yes, I would be asking for this position regardless of what happens with the traffic. Yes, sir.
Any concern from council? No? Okay. PD remodel. We've all seen the 5-year plan. I think we're supportive of hopefully trying to figure out a way to fund the 5-year plan. Year one, we're able to do this through surplus funds. I think it's fantastic. Questions from council on this project?
Just a comment. When we had the privilege of touring all the city facilities, that was the one that was the biggest eye shocker for me. Something that kind of sugarcoats is the outside facade that's been added sometime in a lifetime, but I would encourage the citizens to take a look at this facility. It is desperately in need of remodeling, and this is well justified that we're doing this.
Well, I'll piggyback on that. I'm hopeful from a curbside standpoint. I really hope that they can find those windows under there, because I think we all want the police station to be it's a double-edged sword, because you obviously want the station to be one of seriousness and a place where you don't want to end up, but on the same token, there's a lot of reasons that people do need to go to the police station for a positive reason, and we want, I do hope that we can make it a little bit more inviting from, a citizen perspective, because, Ken's right, at some point they have that facade that's very cold and.
Well, it's deceiving too, what's that
Yeah,
infrastructure?
absolutely. So anyway, I agree with Councilman Brawley, much needed money there, and hope to see a good improvement for the citizens as well.
Comments on that? Okay, so the traffic unit, this was brought to us by Chief Birch, and since the last council meeting, you're in receipt of some stats that show that as they've increased citations by 27%, that we've seen accidents decrease by 20%, I'm understanding that correctly, right? Which is largely his entire premise for bringing this to the council. Not to mention this will allow extra sets of boots on the streets to allow his regular patrol officers to do things other than traffic, other than accidents. So, discussion from council.
Mayor, I sat on the grand jury about a year and a half ago, and it was very obvious to cities in the south that had active traffic enforcement were able to solve some major crimes in their community, and to get some people that needs to have some help, I guess you'd say, and get off the streets or change the way their path they were taking. And so I thought it was very eye-opening that how few we were actually, the city of Denison was getting in that type of enforcement. So I'm fully behind the having a traffic unit for city.
Other comments, questions from council?
Mayor, I've gone back and forth on this, and I'm struggling a little bit with it for a couple of reasons. One is I don't know how we're going to quantify the success of this program, because quite frankly, 134 accidents in 6 months. That's 5 a week, and I don't know how many of those are major accidents, but I don't know how much better. I know that the chief put in here that, and it appears to be true, that as the citations rise, the accidents fall. My concern is how much lower can you get them? I don't know what's a reasonable expectation for the accidents to get to. The other thing is I don't really I don't want to see us becoming unfriendly from that standpoint, where we're known as a place that's just constantly writing tickets for things that aren't necessarily, I don't know what the right term is. I just don't want us to feel like we're picking on our own citizens here with that type of traffic enforcement. So I struggle because I don't know how we're going to quantify it, how we're going to measure the success of it, and how it's going to appear what we're doing is in the best interest of the citizens, because it's a hard sell for us to tell our citizens we're going to write more tickets so we have less accidents. I understand that it may be a statistical accurate statement, but it's really tough, so I'm kind of struggling with it.
Chief, can you come up and speak again to the value? Let's not talk about the money. Let's talk about the value of the program as you see it. I know you've implemented this in at least one other city that you worked in. Some of the value of your inability today to truly go and work areas that the citizens are complaining about, perhaps. I know that's in your memo here.
That's one of the major aspects of it. Right now, we get complaints from neighborhoods about speeding, reckless driving, certainly when school's in session, we get a lot of complaints during those times. And we can address those with our current staff, but not long-term. We can just go here and there. This enables us to target a specific area where we're receiving these type of complaints and can stay there as long as we need to until we see some results. The accidents that have been discussed, that's kind of a side benefit. If I made that as a major selling point, or tried to make that as a major selling point, then I may have been remiss doing that, because we do have a relatively low accident rate. However, we have a relatively high rate of serious accidents, and that's where you see this type of a unit seem to have some impact. A lot of our citations that we write are to the same people over and over again. I expect that kind of thing to continue. However, those people may or may not learn having a traffic unit in the city. With 2 officers and the amount of traffic that we have coming through the city, there's no doubt there'll be some complaints generated. I've seen that in the past. But I don't think that we'll end up with some type of reputation for being, unfriendly to the motorists that come through town. The traffic unit officers will be tasked with compliance. I think sometimes we're a little bit remiss in letting people off probably when we shouldn't, and maybe citing people who would comply otherwise that we probably shouldn't cite. So that's going to be a challenge for these officers to write those citations when they're needed, and if they're not needed, then we're not going to be writing them, but we're going to be issuing warnings in those instances.
Chief, this may be more for Robert. With this kind of increase in citations, what's been our municipal judge's response to, are we gonna be able to handle that many more citations coming through the court?
That's why the court clerk is needed. It's needed now, partly for administrative functionality. It will definitely be needed with the traffic enforcement unit. There's enough work there to keep a full-time court clerk new and busy. With the addition of the traffic unit, they would have plenty to do. As far as the caseload of the court, I believe there's room to handle the additional processes that would be needed with the traffic unit. So I think there's a capacity, yes.
Other questions? So Chief, as part of that, I mean, I know that you're hearing, and I've heard you say again, I guess the what's the word I'm looking for, the environment for which these officers work in and under the conditions, you use the term, probably let some folks maybe off when we shouldn't have, and maybe a little too aggressive when we should. What do we, meaning you and your team, do to ensure that the concerns of just being out there and nickel and diming the citizens is not going to occur?
Well, I haven't seen that as being a major issue now, and I would just expect, as far as my expectations as the administrator and what we're trying to do, again, the message is compliance. And we also base that on what type of citations we're seeing and what kind of complaints we get. If we're getting complaints over very minor traffic violations, then there may be times where we'll have discussion with the officer if we felt, that was necessary. If not, and it's not to get the officer in trouble, but that's part of the educational process of this, what is our mission and what are we accomplishing?
And to your point there, I don't think in my 7 or 8 years of doing this that I've really received any complaints that were unfair or from a traffic perspective. I have received compliments over the last 1.5 years of an increased presence, it seems like, from your team. So those are certainly positive. Just increased presence on the streets, not necessarily doing traffic. That's probably not what they were referring to.
One other question, Chief. What's your idea or your concept on, you're gonna, if you get 2 more guys on the ground, which frees up the other guys to do their patrol, how are we gonna quantify this as success? Because part of the concern is, we get extra guys in any department. The citizens deserve to get the most utility out of every employee that the city has. And that's partly our responsibility, is to make sure that they're getting that bang for their buck. So speak a little bit to what your expectation is if you pull traffic off of your guys who are doing patrols now, what do you expect to see out of the guys who are not having any traffic anymore?
Well, we do gauge monthly, what's called self-initiated activity for when they're not responding to calls for service. What are they doing on their own?
Okay.
So when they're not, won't be tasked as much, traffic enforcement will still remain every patrol officer's duty. It won't be their primary duty, but we'll be able to look at their activity to see if they're doing these other things besides traffic that they're doing on their own, investigative type stops or business patrols or those kind of things that we can quantify.
All right.
Only question I have is, Robert or Chief, you know, if we don't get the expected revenues, and this is being driven by these revenues to set this up to begin with, do we have a plan? Would we be looking at this if we weren't expecting these revenues?
I think that's a good.
Would we be considering adding 2 new officers into this if we knew we wouldn't get 50% of those revenues?
I know the chief would ask for more officers.
I understand
And
that.
from-
Ask for more employees too.
But from my perspective as city manager, I do believe there's value in this program. I do believe it's going to increase public safety. And one of the things that council has come back and said we want to take a look at is how do we make our community safer? And this is how you do that. You have to add officers because the officers that we have now are working hard with schools and the relationships they have within the community to provide excellent protection. But there's only so many of them. So providing 2 additional officers in a targeted manner like this is going to allow the traffic units to focus on responding to accidents. So you're not taking other officers off the street. They can respond to calls and complaints without the list of the waiting period goes down because you've got people that are more specialized units that are handling those things that take more time to deal with. So I see the value of the program regardless of the revenue. For me, it's not about revenue. That's a beneficial side effect of the program is that it pays for itself. But that is not the point of this thing. The point is increasing safety on the streets and safety for our community. And I think this does it.
That was, would this be in here as a budget request, irregardless of revenue?
Yes.
Would be this year?
Yes, sir.
Other questions and comments? Okay, thank you, Chief. So as far as right now, and again, we still can adopt the budget, but as far as what the city manager files this week, we have consensus to leave this in the budget, or put this in the budget. This council. Some yes, some no's.
Still, right now, I would be yes, but I'm still kind of wavering.
You have to, if you got something
Okay, so
to say, do you have to
we've got
let them know ahead of time, or do they?
we've got yeses, Robert. We'll need to take action on this. So not today. So however you need to file the budget, either with or without it, file the budget, and then when we.
Let me explain to you what I'll do. It is the city manager's budget when I file it with the city secretary. So I'm going to provide you the budget I think council will adopt, which is I will have this information as part of that budget. Council has the absolute authority to remove whatever they want to remove from the budget, but prior to the actual adoption of the council's budget. And I think there may be a gentleman here who wants to address this topic if I can understand the chatter about it.
Okay. All right.
Sir, you can. Sir. Come on, we're gonna
Come on forward here.
suspend the rules, so to speak.
If you would, please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Calvin Marker. A year ago, the lady that I share the house with bought the house. Her son lives here in Denison. She's got one in Durant. She wanted to get close to them. We moved down from Greenville. We look out for each other, and we share expenses, and that makes living comfortable for both of us. But what I've got is a problem across the street from me. I've got a man that's got I live at 1022 North Park Drive, and the fellow across the street at 1023 has 3 motorcycles with straight pipes. I mean, he'll come out of there at 11 o'clock at night, and when he hits the street, he comes down his yard, he cranks that thing up. It's a surprise to me that he doesn't do wheelies. And the neighbor 2 doors down from me has little children. He wakes them up. I've got,
Sir, if I could ask a question, is your issue that with the loudness or that he's speeding?
well, I called the police about it, and officer come out, and we talked, and he says, I can't do anything about it because there is no ordinance against straight pipes on any vehicle. And so that's when he said you need to go to the city council and see if there's any remedy for straight pipes on any vehicle, not just motorcycles.
Okay, sir, let me stop you real quick. We're limited to what we can discuss on to things that we posted. So since this is not related to the budget or the traffic unit, if you would, we're almost done here, and you can visit with the chief, and he will make sure that that information gets to the council.
Oh, okay.
Okay, does that make sense to you? I'm not cutting you off because I want to, but it's because it's not a posted agenda item.
Okay,
Related
well,
to-
it's not your territory.
So, well, we can't discuss it tonight.
Needs to be added to a future agenda.
Well, I was just making the complaint. What the city decides they want to do with it is their
Right, I
problem.
understand. So as soon as, we're gonna be done in just a minute, if you will visit with the chief and he'll be on it for you. Okay, so you'll file the budget and
We will file the
that will
budget.
be in it, and then that evening.
Council can make whatever recommendation they need to.
Discussion on that.
And just for the record, so council understands, what will also be included in the budget is the city's matching portion of the library project, which is not included on this page. And I would take for granted that it's a decision point, but we have received grant funding from both the Library Endowment Fund, the Munson Foundation, the Smith Foundation, and the Regensburger Foundation for the project. And that number will also be in the budget.
All right, and then the last thing was the decision point on the water annex building on the water side. Again, that's a remodel of cosmetic.
Yes, it's flowing again. There's also some walls and some work that will create, I think, a more customer-focused counter for development services. And they're minor in nature, but the impact should be large. Yes, sir.
I visited with Robert earlier today about this. Yes, we can put it in the budget. They won't spend it without going back to council, and that kind of protects us really from the whole discussion of facilities and where's the best place for staff that we've embarked on over the last several months. So, we lease that building. What's the long-term use for that building? It will have to be determined, in my opinion, prior to actually spending those dollars, but this will at least put it in the budget, and it won't be an amendment at that point.
Is there going to be any reduction in lease or future for the landlord on the property there?
I think that's something that we would need to visit with the landlord on. The lease expires in 2016. So if we wanted to make a long-term play, I think that they have worked with us in the past. I imagine they'll work with us in the future. And there's some things that I'd like to discuss with council in executive session on that building.
All right. Thank you. Agenda item 4, executive session pursuant to Chapter 551 Texas Government Code. The council will now convene into executive session to discuss deliberations regarding economic development pursuant to Section 551.07 and receive a report, hold a discussion on the TPJ properties and also the Preston Harbor development. The time is 7:08 p.m.